I'd like to call Property Management Committee to order. First order of business, call the roll.
Yeah, I see him. Commissioner Anthony Johnson.
Here.
Commissioner Wayne Irvin. Here. Commissioner Laura Davidson.
Here.
Commissioner Phil Wilson.
Here.
Commissioner Carl Boyd. Commissioner Phil Dodd. Here. Chairman McAdoo.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, before we get started, Commissioner Boyd is in the hospital, so we don't know what is going on with him. Maybe just for observation, but everyone remember him in your prayers. And we will try to keep you updated as we get information on him. Next on the agenda, approval of minutes. Commissioner Johnson, Vice.
Mr. Chairman, I've looked over the minutes and read them, and they seem to be in order, so I move to approve as written.
Motion to approve, and a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next on the agenda, project manager discussion.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead.
So I have asked Eric Hennessy, my chief of staff, and Sonia Stevenson. They've been doing the research into this. Indeed, they pulled a committee together to examine this. And so I think where we're at with this potential position before this committee is that based on the number of potential projects, new construction projects we have, we believe, the mayor's office believes, that a position like this is justified in order to bring projects in time and on budget, especially projects of a sizable nature like the potential forensic center, which we'll get to in just a little bit. But what I would like to do, if it's not too much trouble, is to ask Sonia and Mr. Hennessy to come forward to kind of explain what that committee has done and what their findings, if that's acceptable.
Okay. I don't think we need to suspend the rule because they're on the agenda anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can come by me. That's okay. Good evening, everyone. So thank you, Mayor Carr, for the introduction. So at the request, Mr. Hennessy, Chief of Staff Hennessy, and myself got together with Adam Dodd and with Stan Vaught from the PBA, looked to see, and Mike Hughes, that's right, our county engineer, got together with, all of us kind of got together and said, what does this look like? What would benefit the county? What would help us to be sure that we stay on track with projects, that we stay on track with the cost of projects, that any issues that they see are caught like early in the game. I'm not a construction person, but I can imagine if you're, 2 or 3 days into something and it's messed up, that it could be costly to change. Adam Dodd has done a wonderful job making sure that he stayed on top of this, but this position in and of itself is a full-time position, and Adam already had a full-time job. So he is burning the candle at both ends, trying to make sure that he catches anything that we need to correct early on. And so this would allow Adam to come back and be able to focus on the position that he is actually in with the facilities. He will still oversee remodels and stuff within the county. That's not what the idea of this is, unless it's a major reconstruction. So he would still take care of those things, and he would also provide his expertise and guidance in coordination with this position. But we do feel like that the county is growing. I don't think anybody in this room would disagree that the county is is growing rapidly, and with that becomes more and more facilities or updates. Our buildings are getting older, needing repairs and those type things. We currently have a list of projects that will take us probably over the next 2 to 3 years that would need somebody's full-time attention looking at those projects to make sure that for the things that I mentioned earlier, that we stay on task, that we're not running behind a schedule, because that can be costly, and materials and all those things that we mentioned. So in coordination with all of us, pulled just after I got an idea of what we were looking for or what it would entail, and the PBA was very involved in this because they have handled a lot of these things as, you know, on behalf of the county. I researched other entities that had a similar position in our surrounding area to see what they were doing, how they were doing it, and we came up with a job description that meets what our county needs going forward. And after the job description was written and I gathered the information, the 5 of us, is that right? The 5 of us got together, went back through it again, made some tweaks, and then presented to the mayor for review to see if he had any additional thoughts. In this, I don't know, it is my belief that we will currently have and will have within the next 2 to 3 years, and maybe even longer, 3 to 5 years, projects that will sustain this position at a full-time capacity. Just saying each of the sites, Eric,
I made a list, if that would help. So just from what we were able to discuss and think about that we know today, you've got 4 public health and safety buildings, the Goldstein renovation, forensic center, transfer station, recovery court, the health department renovations, and then the convenience center updates. So that's just what we know of today, and as things get done, I'm sure there will be additional projects that will come along and keep coming along all the time.
So with that, based on the guidance from Stan Vaught, who does work in this world, and also talking with Adam and Mike Hughes, the thought is that this position, this is more than enough work to keep a person busy full-time, and for these projects, and then also moving forward, any additional projects that we may have. If for some reason, 3, 5, 7 years from now, we don't have the same number of projects, then we can revisit what this position would do. We would have options, but this would make sure that we are being wise with the taxpayers' dollars, and that we're making sure that we're managing those funds and managing our projects. So, does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Irvin?
I'm sorry, did I miss the reporting relationship? And
I did not tell you that. No, you didn't. I failed to say that. And thinking also, spoke with building codes. Tanya also assisted in this process, her having a background in codes. She looked over it to make sure that we weren't missing anything, that the expertise that this person would have to have. The reporting structure would be that the position would be under the county, report to the county mayor, keep the county mayor abreast of where the projects are, what problems that there may be, and also that could be shared then with the commission and this body and whomever else needs to be. We are would be looking for somebody with an associate's degree or technical degree with emphasis in building construction, construction management, or related field, supplemented by at least 3 years of previous experience in construction design, construction management, site evaluation, property acquisition, project management, building and construction inspection and supervision, and any equivalency of those education, training, and experience that meets that qualifications. It is a bonus. It says must. Yep. Wait a minute. I've got an additional thing in here. Let me see this. Excuse me. I misspoke. It requires 5 years minimum of supervisory experience involving construction projects. Additionally, it's preferred that we have someone with a bachelor's degree in architecture, construction management, and or in addition to a general contractor's license, because we feel like those individuals have gotten their certification and their training in order to be able to properly inspect and those type things. From the state of Tennessee, experience as a construction foreman, a certified project manager, government procurement, electrical and plumbing license are preferred but not required. So those would be, we just tried to look at all aspects of what this person might have to have a knowledge in. Electrical, plumbing, is the construction being done properly? Do they understand the code, HVAC, those type things? So we tried to cover all the bases in a roundabout way, not to make it so exclusive that people wouldn't have an interest in it because of the requirements, but that we're doing the best that we can to fill a position that would bring value to the county. So.
Mr. Irvin?
Would it be appropriate to have a dotted line, perhaps, or something along those lines to the finance director? So that there was some way to keep direct report to the mayor makes sense. What I'm trying to sort out is from what I heard, it's more operations, construction, et cetera, than it is financial. If I'm wrong, correct me. But I'm trying to understand so that we keep tabs on the budget side as well of this.
Well, the mayor is responsible for all the purchasing for the county. Everything has to go through his desk. There is a purchase order process that has to be complied with as far as line numbers and within the budget. So when the budget is set by this body, then the purchasing administrator will make sure that any things that are purchased are in line with that. So they have to be within that budget, and the mayor has to sign off as the purchasing, he's the head purchasing agent for the county. So it would have to be in line with the budget, I guess, for lack of a better way to say it. He couldn't purchase something that was outside of the budget lines.
Mayor, you want to
Yeah,
discuss that?
so what I envision is exactly what Sonia outlined, but what I think, if you said it, I didn't hear it, but what I see is a reporting mechanism to property and management, not unlike what Director Dodd is doing currently and other directors. So there is a monthly briefing that particular individual would bring to this particular committee, reporting on the various projects, whether it was the public safety buildings or the potential forensic center, or whether it was the transfer station, can bring that process. And if I may, and he doesn't know I'm going to say this, so I hope I don't embarrass him, but Rutherford County was very blessed in the last 10 days to discover a almost $50,000 error on the part of Mr. Hennessy, and it was to our benefit as it relates to a relationship that we had with the city of Murfreesboro with regard to some codes on landscaping. Well, we were very fortunate that Mr. Hennessy was reviewing that, but quite honestly, that's exactly the kind of thing that this position would do. They would oversee the contracts to make sure the contracts are complying with both city and county codes, and that the inventories related to the construction of those facilities are in line with what's being billed. And so, quite honestly, I see that's just one example in the last week to 10 days where the county saved $45,000. And that being said, what I'm worried about is, what is my office missing? Just to be real candid, I don't know. Maybe we didn't miss anything else, but maybe we did. And we're not perfect, but we're trying to get better at cost control and delivering on time and on budget. And where this essentially came from was the one-stop facility, just to be real honest with you. We were way out of line on cost control and on deliverables with regard to the calendar. And I think with bigger projects coming to the county, we're just trying to protect the county's financial interest. And that's what we're trying to do here.
I will say that Adam Dodd deserves some of the credit on that as well. I kind of set the wheels in motion, and he's the one that actually figured it out. So Adam Dodd deserves some credit there, too.
Any other questions?
Was there a salary range that you determined?
So we looked at the different positions that we researched, and it is our belief in order to get somebody with the skill sets that's needed for this, the salary range would be in the $95,000 to $110,000 range. dependent upon the person's experiences and qualifications that they would have, obviously, would adjust that. So that's in line with what others are paying for that type of service, where they're independent of sorts, but yet they have a reporting structure.
Commissioner Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman. I would certainly agree. I believe it is appropriate that the reporting is to who we consider to be the budget authority for the project. And I believe what you mentioned, just like Adam's monthly report to project management, I think that's extremely appropriate and in line of how we would want the reporting to go. That discussion could be had here, and we're all present for that. So I agree that that would be, to me, the most appropriate way to do that.
That's my preference, Commissioner, is just not unlike what we're doing currently with other departments that report to this committee. I can't imagine why we wouldn't continue that workable process.
Other questions? If not, do I entertain a motion?
Mr. Chairman, while you're entertaining a motion.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just one particular comment. I see this position as being anything but a political hire or a political assignment. And the concern that I have, and it's not a big one, don't get me wrong, but Mayor Carr doesn't want to be mayor forever. And at some point in time, his replacement may come in and say, I'm going to change things up, when the majority of the commissioners like the person that's in that position. Would it be appropriate for the mayor to have the responsibility to manage this position, to hire this position with the approval of the county commission, and to not be able to terminate this position without proper cause and without approval of the county commission?
No objection.
Just a question on my part, if I may.
Go
Would this require anything, like, would you have to send, I'm thinking in my mind, in order to word it that way, would we have to do something special, I guess is what I'm saying? Or just put that in? I'm asking you because I don't know the answer to this question. I just want to make sure that if I need to do something, that I'm doing it right. Is there anything that would have to be on record, or would it just be part of the record once approved, and then we would go that way?
The thought that I have is just make the position a professional position, and one that, once again, the county commission actually funds most of this stuff. And if, let's just say someone came in and said, I've got a friend that I want in that position, so I'm going to make that change. If the county commission did not want that change, if that wording in my mind is not in there, the county mayor could do anything that he or she wanted to do with that position. I'm not sure I understood your question.
Well, the reason why I asked it the way I did is because any of our positions, unless it's appointed and has that process that can, I mean, Tennessee is an at-will employer, first of all. So what that means is anybody could be released from their position for any reason as long as it was non-discriminatory, right? So my thought is the person in this position, if they're doing their job and doing what they're supposed to, a future mayor, unless this person was not performing their essential duties of their job, would not have a reason to let the person go. So that's why I'm just, I don't think that's in our other department heads' job description, so that's the only reason I'm asking. I'm not trying to muddy the water. I just want to make sure I understand.
Stevenson, maybe it should be in the other department heads' positions. Okay. That the deputy mayor or the chief of staff or whatever we're calling Mr. Hennessy is absolutely positively should serve at the
pleasure
at the appointment and the volition of the mayor. But there are other positions that, in my mind, that are there for a particular reason. not for political assignments. And that's my concern. Just as an example, if a new mayor were to come in at the end of Mayor Carr's term, whenever that may be, and decided that wanted to keep Eric, or she wanted to keep Eric, and Eric wanted to stay, that's fine. But Eric has little to say so in that process. It's serving at the wheel of the mayor, and I agree with that. It's like the mayor's assistant. But there are other positions, such as this one, that doesn't have that personal tie to it, that I think should work for the county. They have to have a supervisor. That supervisor's the mayor. The mayor makes the decision to hire, recommends that to the county commission. The county commission confirms it or denies it. The same when it comes to terminating. So if a new mayor came in and said, I'm bringing in my next door neighbor to do this particular position, there's nothing that would require him not to be able to do that, in my mind.
Well,
you say that there's some things in there, but I'm saying that the mayor probably could do that.
so it's a difference in a hire and an appointment. So somebody who is appointed falls under a different, they work at the pleasure of the mayor because they're appointed. This position would be a posted position and would be hired by the county mayor as an employee of the county. I know that I can't, Nick Mike could better explain than me. I know that I know in my mind what I'm saying.
Let me chime in here real quick before Nick gets up here. So I understand come on up, Nick. I understand what Commissioner Phillips is saying, and however we need to work out the language to accomplish that, I think that's appropriate. So I agree that the mayor would appoint upon confirmation by the county commission, and the mayor cannot dismiss without the appropriate vote by the county commission in order to keep this an apolitical position. Did I say that correctly, Commissioner? So, so whatever language we need to construct to make that happen, the mayor certainly endorses. Nick?
Yeah, just real quick. So I think it's state law says it's okay for department heads to be appointed by the county mayor subject to confirmation of the legislative body. I think that's okay. So when this moves on to commission, assuming that it does, we can put in the resolution that approves this job description that language in there, and we can also go ahead and put it in the job description, I think. The other question, and I think it's beneficial that your county mayor is agreeable to it, is the dismissal part of it, the second part of it. And generally speaking, the mayor has the ability for department heads to dismiss without having the county legislative body being involved. And I'm happy to look at that issue, but assuming that it's okay for us to do that and everybody's in agreement, we could do that. If we want to have that in the same resolution. I just want to make sure that we can, and assuming that we can, it's good. And I'll tell you all at the county commission meeting if we can't do that, and we've got to take that piece of it out. But if we can do it, what I'd recommend here, now that your county mayor is in agreement, is to approve this, move it on to county commission with the added language that the appointment and the dismissal is subject to the approval of the county legislative body by majority vote, subject to review of the county attorney. Let me look at it. If I have to speak up at the county commission meeting on that issue, I will. Does that work? Yes, sir.
I'll make double sure that the mayor is okay with that. Thank you.
And also, don't leave out the property management committee. It needs to come here first.
That's correct.
All commissioners now are looking at following the committee process. Now you want to jump over us?
No, sir. We do not want to jump over.
I think property management committee should make that call, but we'll let our county attorney bring it back, and we'll look at it for further review.
Mr. Chairman, my apologies. It was my full intent before it went to the full commission that it would come to this committee before going to the full commission.
Oh, I see. Okay, so next month we'll have a revised version? Is that the idea?
No, what I think Mr. Chairman was talking about is any appointment that I make would have to come to property management before it went to the full commission.
So
Did I understand correctly?
That's correct.
From a legal standpoint, I don't think that's necessary to put in the resolution, but I think by customary practice, Chairman and Mayor, that's what would happen anyway. When the mayor has done his interviews and has somebody selected, they would present it to this body, just like we do with steering with appointments and such not, and whatnot, and then that would get forwarded with a recommendation, up or no, for confirmation to the county legislative body.
Any other questions?
The resolution was what I was trying to come up with.
Oh, okay.
Do we have a final job description? Yeah, for this opportunity, do we have a final job description?
But we'll have to amend it to include the language that was discussed tonight. And then
Is it on SharePoint right now?
I don't think they put it on the SharePoint.
Haven't seen it.
Right, I don't think they did.
And one other idea, I kind of like what y'all are talking about now. It's just an idea. You could make this a contract position of some sort and build in all kinds of stuff. I'm just tossing that out there. You have the mechanism for approval and all that kind of stuff. You could also create a situation where you have a contract with an individual that's then approved by this body and the commission. So not to confuse it, but that's another way to do it.
Question, we did think about that, and it just kind of was the consensus of the committee. We did think about that, and just it was the consensus of the committee that it was better just to go ahead and hire an employee.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, with the understanding that our county attorney will be writing up a resolution on this, my motion is just the gist of what we need in there. And then the resolution will come not back through this committee, but to the county commission.
Correct, that sounds good.
Won't come back here.
We don't need to bring it back here, do we?
No, sir, but what we will need to do is it'll obviously have to go to budget, because it'll be a part of the overall budget for 23, 24. But so it goes to budget before it goes to the full commission.
But looking at the time frame for the budget for the next fiscal year, look like we should go ahead and get it out of this committee and send it on the budget with your.
I would move to approve the hiring of a project manager to report to the county mayor, as well as the property management each month. Hiring and firing would be through the mayor, a confirmation from property management and the county commission.
Yeah, the revised motion, second on that, I think Commissioner.
Nick, does that motion include everything presented today? If he were to add as presented, including discussion, does that cover everything?
I think so. I don't hate to get, I know it's important to get technical sometimes, but the resolution is going to be very vanilla. It's going to have the language in it that we've seen from others. Y'all will see it before the commission meeting, so I'm confident that it'll reflect what's gone on here today. The one thing I'm checking on is, can we internally, locally, have the commission approve the dismissal of the individual once appointed by the mayor? And if the law suggests that we can, then the resolution is going to read to that effect. So I think so, yeah. And I think it covers it. Yeah. And if it doesn't, you can blame me on commission meeting, and we can have another discussion then, or send it back down here.
The second still stand?
I will second.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Johnson?
It's my understanding this will go to budget and then the commission.
Correct. Any other discussion? If not, call the roll.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Irving?
Yes.
Commissioner Anthony Johnson?
Aye.
Chairman McAdoo?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, Rutherford County Chamber of Commerce. Patrick, Mayor, I'm going to turn this over to you.
So, as you know, we had, when I was sworn in on September 1, the Property Management Committee had before it a potential LOI, letter of intent, with Pratt on the Singer Road property, and part of the evaluation of that particular Singer Road property as a facility for recycling was the valuation of that property, and I was interested in the valuation of that property, its market value, as a result of the tentative agreement to lease that property to Pratt for $1 a year. And it just seemed to me that 19 acres plus or minus was a lot more valuable to the county than $1 a year. So, and quite honestly, the backstory on this, so I had an informal lunch conversation with Paul Latour, who's the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, and it was, quite honestly, it wasn't about this, it was just Paul saying, welcome aboard, Joe, you have my deepest condolences for being county mayor, how can I pray for you, kind of thing, right? No, I'm kidding. Paul's a great guy, and we have a good relationship, as you all know. But in any event, so we were just talking about county stuff, and I just said, Paul, I said, I'm interested. I said, I mean, your background as a businessman, as the chamber president and chairman, I said, do you have any idea if the land over there at Singer Road, the Singer property, I mean, what is your impression of that land? And he said, well, describe it to me. And I described it. He says, oh, yeah, I'm familiar with that land. And his comment to me at the time, we said, that's a unicorn. I said, really? I said, what do you mean by a unicorn? He said, it's a very unique piece of property because of the access to a railroad spur by CSX. I said, so in that regard, do you think that property, the county may be not appreciating the value of that piece of property? He says, I don't know without putting a value on it. And so, as you probably know, they did, the chamber, at my behest, did just an assessment, a general assessment, nothing formal, but a general assessment of the value of that property, and it was estimated at $2.5 million or $250,000 per acre, which to me seemed like a significant amount of money for the county. And then Paul and Patrick Kamak, who does the Vice President of Development, and I had another conversation, and they said, you know, that's such a unique piece of property. That piece of property may have greater value to the county and tax roll benefit than we realize, and what we would like to do is explore the opportunity about marketing that piece of property to a particular corporation or entity for the purposes of getting it back on the tax rolls. Gentlemen and ladies, we're trying to find creative ways of creating revenue for our county to pay for our schools, and that's all of our big concern. I'm not proposing we sell the property. What I'm proposing is we, as a body, look at the feasibility of determining its worth so we can derive its greatest value to the community. So with that, I've asked Patrick to come up and make a presentation to you so that we together could make that determination. And so, Mr. Chairman, if you please, I would like to bring Patrick Carmack up, and so he can make a presentation and answer any questions by the committee, if that's acceptable.
Do I have a motion to suspend? It's on the agenda, okay. No objection, I will call Patrick up.
Patrick, this is a rough crowd. You better be ready.
Try my best. Thank you, Mayor, Chair McAdoo. Thank you so much for having me, Commissioners. Pleasure to be here. And it's an honor to serve the county and partner with the County Commission. So thank you for your partnership to our chamber and to our Destination Rutherford initiative of workforce development and economic development. And so thank you for having us, and it's an honor to do our job. And so in my role of Senior Vice President of Economic Development, my main goal is to attract great jobs to our community. And so that comes through working with our existing employers to help make sure they want to stay here and they want to reinvest and bring more jobs when they can. And it also involves recruiting new companies and bringing those high-quality jobs for our residents. And so that's our main goal. In order to do that, we need real estate options where these companies can go. And right now, especially in the industrial land, it's very hard to find industrial land in our county. And so we've grown so much, and we've thrived in so many ways and right now we're struggling to find industrial land. And that goes for our entire region and very populated places in the state. And so this is an opportunity we thought would be very interesting to try to market this property at Florence and Singer Road and use a couple strategies we would use is we have a lot of partners in economic development. Two of our main partners are the state of Tennessee's Economic Development Department and Tennessee Valley Authority's Economic Development Department. And so they're constantly going around the country, around the world, trying to recruit companies, and we work closely with them basically on a daily basis. So if the committee approves us trying to market it, we would get this in front of all those partners and use other tactics, getting this site on websites, in front of consultants that advise these companies, making sure we do everything we can to market the site and get a better feel for the interest, what type of industries and what type of jobs we may be able to attract. So that's what we're here today, just to get your buy-in to let us explore this, have some more conversations, and see where this goes and where the interest is.
Okay. Do I have any questions from any committee members? Al, do you have anything to add?
Again, I want the committee to know all I'm trying to do, and I hope you would join me, is determine its value to the community, to find out what interest is out there. If there is an interest, let's quantify that interest on behalf of the county. This in no way obligates the county at all in any way whatsoever. Patrick and the chamber are doing this at no cost to the county. And so I don't see, honestly, I see no downside to them exploring the feasibility of how this particular piece of property, as being unique as it is, could attract high-paying jobs. And I hope I'm not out of order, Patrick, but when Patrick first started doing the assessment of its value, there was an inquiry made. It didn't pan out because the property turned out to be too small, but there was an inquiry made about a pharmaceutical company that was interested in it. $90,000 was the average wage, 1,000 jobs. It turned out that the property's footprint was too small, but that, ladies and gentlemen, is actually what piqued my interest about the value of this particular piece of property and how that particular piece of property might be better suited for another purpose other than being a county piece of property, because we could honestly take the sale of that land, use it to reinvest something that's more usable to the county, like some school property, right? Because we got a growing school problem. That's just one example. But then couple that with the jobs that are created, the revenue that's created, the tax base that's there, it just seemed like something that would be in our best interest to, at the very least, explore. So that's why I wanted Patrick to come to you with your permission to proceed with exploring the various options that we may have about how to leverage this piece of property to our county's financial benefit.
Do I hear a motion on that?
I would make the motion to allow the Chamber of Commerce Destination Rutherford body to assess the value of this property, to report back to this committee with no obligation and no cost.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Not call the roll.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Irving,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Chairman McAdoo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Patrick. Next on the agenda, sale of single road, home, barn, and shed. I think we're going to get a summary of that from the mayor, of what it's sold for and how much we
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think Mr. Christensen's going to help us out with that.
County attorney gonna bring us up to date on that?
Well, despite the rain, Mr. Vaught with Bob Parks went and held an auction today over at Singer Road. Before you, Rachel, was it on the SharePoint? Yes, sir. Okay, there is a purchase agreement that was executed. There were 3 different auctions held, but there were no bidders on 2 of them. So the shed and the barns didn't have any bidders. So we might have to think of, the mayor might have to put his head together and see what we can do with all that scrap.
I got some wonderful ideas, by the way.
Sure. Yes, but there were some bidders on the actual house with the buyer's premium involved. The household, or at least the highest bid, was $36,300, and we have retained half of that as a deposit on the property. Before you, on your SharePoint, is the agreement for that. The sale is subject to the approval of the Board of Commissioners. So I would suggest if this body is amenable to this sale price, to move it along to the commission. If that were the case, once it gets to the commission, they will approve this. There will be a bill of sale done, and the highest bidder will pay the remaining of the purchase price, and we'll have 60 days to make arrangements to remove the house from the property. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Dodd, you got
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I make a motion to accept the auction purchase agreement, and I have a point of discussion if I get a second.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Wilson.
I talked to Stan Vault and wanted to clarify that the purchase price includes 10% buyer's premium. Stan Vault has declared and reminded it in the list agreement he will not be keeping a premium. He will keep advertising, some insurance cost. So I just want to make that clear that per the listing agreement, Bob Parks Auction Company is not receiving that commission.
And we're very thankful for Mr. Vaught on that. I think he set aside around $2,000 for the advertising costs, et cetera, but to allow the buyer's premium to go directly to us without a further fee is very nice of them.
Okay, that's good news. Any other questions? Call the roll.
Commissioner Irving?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Chairman McAdoo?
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. Next on the agenda, one-stop update. Adam. And before you get started, we had a tour of One Stop today, and it's coming along real good. And I tell you, it is going to be a grade A building. It's built top notch. It's the Cadillac, like some say. So it's real nice. We started out on a rough foot, but it's coming along real nice. Adam.
So we'll start tonight's report off with the one stop. The site work is ongoing. The weather has cooperated. The contractor has been able to proceed with the grading. We're about 95% on the proof roll. The rear drive-in lanes, which you saw this evening, they're still under construction. Various dirt work, landscaping is ongoing. Exterior glass remains at 95%, waiting on roughly 3 pieces of door glass that had to be special ordered. They were on back order. All the electrical, mechanical, low voltage, and fire remain about 90% complete. We're waiting final inspections. Low voltage data, the tube system for the drive-through has been installed, the security system ongoing. Millwork and cabinetry remain at roughly 75%. The county clerk and the PBA agreed to some minor modifications, changing some open front base cabinets to add some additional closed face storage, which we went over that this afternoon. Those are scheduled to be delivered to the site on 5/17, so we should still be in line after the installation for that June 1st deadline that we're looking at right now. The building now has permanent power. The contractor anticipates installing flooring within the next 2 weeks. MTE actually completed that tie-in on 4/19. So once the building is acclimated and the temperatures and everything are meet the requirements, then they'll start some of the final trim and the flooring. The contractor anticipates electrical, mechanical, and the architect will all get together within the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's the window. We're looking to compile our cut sheets and go ahead and start working on that. FF&E is scheduled to be delivered to site for the week of 5/22 through 5/26. And I will be coordinating facilities training and walkthroughs also for the week of May the 22nd. That's the DMV, that's the state entrance side. The rear of the building, you can see landscaping's ongoing. Majority of the site work is complete. That's the interior. When you come in through the lobby, that's the main entrance to the county clerk's office. Various departments. Drive through on your right, I believe that's marriage licenses on the left. That completes my report on One Stop.
Any questions on One Stop? Next on the agenda, public health and safety buildings update.
So we're focusing mostly on the exterior this month. We've been talking about the interior for quite some time. So now since that is about 95% complete, we're focusing on the grounds, some additional landscaping. There's some irrigation modifications that have to take place. The contractor's still working on completing their cut sheets. The fascia and soffit is now complete. The remaining gutter downspout materials were delivered, and that installation is now complete. Siding and trim is complete. Exterior lighting has been completed. Low voltage is ongoing. They are continuing to install and test various controls related to security. Parking lot signage and striping is now complete. I just touched on the landscaping. That's roughly at 50% right now. The generator has been delivered to site. S&W was installing that generator yesterday, and they were out there this morning as well. They anticipate the completion of the generator and all the testing within the next 7 to 10 days. The contractors continuing to work on that punch list. We hope that they can finish that up by next week. Final inspections within 2 weeks. The county maintenance department, we met the superintendent on site last week, and my staff, myself, we went through a short training exercise out there. We familiarized ourselves with various electrical, plumbing, and mechanical aspects of the facility. And that completes my report on Rockville. So I will move on to the Kittrell location.
Adam, before you leave that one, what's the target date for occupancy?
Mid-May right now, pending inspection, final inspections. The week of the 15th.
Any other questions on Rockville?
So Kittrell, the fascia soffit is roughly at 75%. Siding and trim, paint, exterior paint ongoing. Gutter material, downspouts are on site. Sitecrete is ongoing, roughly 70%. The transformer pad is set. Contractor anticipates permanent power. If it didn't get done this afternoon, they're hoping to finish it by tomorrow, and that was delayed due to scheduling with Middle Tennessee Electric. The generator pad and the generator have now been set. That was Tuesday afternoon. The above ceiling, all those inspections, they've passed. The 2-week look ahead at Kittrell would be HVAC startup, the floor system installation following, obviously, climate acclimation, fine grading of soil. They'll start to work on the landscaping and work toward completing the concrete and the paving. Transformer, site concrete, generator. That completes my report on the Kittrell location.
Again, target date.
They are running right now about 17 to 20 days behind due to weather. Now, they haven't had any of the issues with supply chain issues regarding their generators or any of their equipment. So I would say the number that we're looking at right now is the end of May, early June as well. It's not going to be far behind, if anything, behind the Rockville location. Now, on the Las Casas site, the site conditions are similar to last month's report. Mass grading is ongoing. That's at roughly 80%. The proof roll has been completed. They have about 80% of the storm drain in now. There's temp power is now active. Of course, their office trailers on site. They do have rebar has been delivered to site. There's the grade. The contractor anticipates the footings to hopefully start pouring footings within the next 2 weeks. And that's all I have on Las Casas at this time. And I do have a minor report. I know in the past we haven't been reporting on the Walter Hill location. We've been trying to tie up permitting. But I did speak to the contractor earlier this week, and he informed me that permitting is nearly complete. So hopefully by the end of this week, we will have all the permits with the City of Murfreesboro complete. And I believe they look to start digging out there around May 27th. That is the scheduled date to start breaking ground for the Walter Hill location. That completes my report on the public health and safety buildings.
Next on the agenda,
Chairman,
Commissioner
I have
Johnson.
one other thing under this update. I was asked a question about Del Webb property for the health and safety building, and I couldn't answer that, so I reached out to our attorney, and I don't know, Adam, are you privy to what's going on with, have we been deeded the land or anything about it?
I'm not really involved in those discussions. Usually I come on whenever the building starts getting built.
That's the mayor.
Nick still here, or the mayor?
So I can't answer, Commissioner, I can't answer your question definitively about the contract between Del Webb and Rutherford County, because obviously you and I, neither one were here at the time. But I did have a conversation with the Del Webb project manager, and so there's an opportunity for the county to look at that agreement to find out if there's some additional leverage that the county could have in securing a better opportunity for a larger footprint. I need to be careful here. So obviously that's something I'm interested in. I think the county would be interested in too. Adam, our typical footprint at these public safety buildings is about 5 acres. Is that right? Plus or minus, it's about 5. Our Del Webb footprint is 2 acres, which creates some problems and challenges. So I brought that to the attention of the project manager, and he has said, yes, I will be glad to sit down with you and discuss that. And so when I do that, the contract obviously will become an issue, and when I get an understanding of that, I'll be glad to report my findings back to this committee. Does that help?
I think Nick is left, so,
Yeah, next
Right.
week.
yeah. So,
But I don't have a direct answer to your question about what's in that contract that may be different than the contracts we have with the other. Well, those are all private, those are all public, I mean, those are all county properties, so it wouldn't be the same. So I just can't answer the question because I don't know.
Just for clarification, though, it has not been deeded to the county yet, correct?
I can't answer that. I don't know. I mean, it may have. I would be surprised if it hadn't. But I can't answer that definitively. But I will get an answer before the next committee meeting.
I think Nick has the answer.
well, but he's gone. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want the county attorney to reach out to you on this?
He did. That's why I was bringing it up. I just wanted to update everybody on it, you know.
Oh, okay.
By all means, share.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
He and I, the county attorney and I have not discussed this. So if you've had and I know you and I have, and my suggestion was for you to reach out to him directly. So obviously you did that. That's great. So if you want to share that with myself and the committee, that would be good.
Well, at this point, it has not been deeded, and of course that's ongoing now that you're involved, and we'll probably get a better piece of property, hopefully. So, yeah, but it has not been deeded, and I just wanted everybody to realize that, you know, that's not in stone. Yes, we're going to have a piece of property, but it's not a done deal yet.
Quite honestly, Commissioner, the fact that you're sharing that piece of information with us, in my mind, is to our benefit. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, with me in particular, because I'll be reaching back out to Nick before I have a conversation with Pulte. And in my mind, that's to our advantage. So I appreciate you doing that, and thank you very much.
And I got a question. You asked Adam about, are we looking at 5 acres for each one, or?
Adam, that's typically what we have at each location, is about 5 acres plus or minus, and so that tends to be the footprint that we need for the activities that go, the ancillary activities that go with each public safety building, which is part of the concern I had with Del Webb, was that it was a little over 2 acres, and so it was crammed in there. However, meeting with Pulte and Mike Hughes with the engineering department yesterday, they are open to a discussion about what that facility looks like. And I'm trying to be very careful with my language because I don't want to get too far out over my skis, if that's okay. So if everybody can give me 30 days to have that conversation, I would appreciate it, and then I'll be glad to share the details of that conversation, because it was just a conversation, and one that we said we would pick up and have more details at a later date here in the next week or two.
Okay. All right. Okay, next on the agenda, Goldstein Building. Okay, on the Goldstein Building, we looked at in the past, we had a tour, and we decided to hold on that project. And at the time, we had roughly around $300,000 assigned to the Goldstein Building. We got a final figure back from Klein and Sweeney of what they charge for the work that they already have done on Goldstein Building, and it was $29,097. And so that left us roughly over $290,000 in that line item. So what we really need to do tonight is close that Goldstein project so we can send the $290,000, approximately $290,000, back, put it back in our fund ending balance. And we had a handout. Did everyone get a copy of this handout? Did you get a copy? And if you have any questions on the charges or whatnot, or what we're trying to do with the Goldstein building, ask Adam since he's up here.
Commissioners, basically, this project has been ongoing for quite some time. I mean, before myself, we've traced initial conversations and research and engineering back to 2019 on this project. It's been kicked around for a few years. Early last year, this committee basically allocated about $291,000 for schematic design fees. I have listed that schedule of fees there for you on that handout I gave you. The total number minus roughly 10% of we built this contract so that as we went, we could price out each phase of design so that we could cancel the contract with Klein & Sweeney at any time we wanted to, and be able to basically return those funds back to the county. So that second page is a list of all of the work that was done over a roughly 2 to 3 month period of time. And my thoughts are this. KSA worked on this project, like I said, roughly 3 months. This process was unconventional due to the transition and various other determining factors. KSA operated in good faith with the county and the PBA. The architect was patient, understanding of the situation. KSA contained their fees to item line number 1, schematic phase design. But you can see from that list of work that we have that they handed over to us, which is ours. We paid for it, so we'll have that going forward. If we ever want to revisit this in the future, these funds are still not lost. But they clearly worked into item line number 2, did not charge us for that. They held their fees to item line 1 in good faith. And so because of all this, we're going to be recouping and returning about 90% of that money back to the fund.
Any questions? Mr. Dodd?
Where does that leave the Goldstein building? And the second part of that is what prompted this a couple of years ago was the insufficiency of the HVAC, and to rebuild the HVAC in a building that is cut up made the HVAC repair exorbitant. And so 2 things: when will the HVAC, can it be repaired? And then what do we do next?
Yeah, thank you. So part of what Bart Klein did as part of his engineering services is he did a detailed evaluation of that building. And quite honestly, as a part of that evaluation, and Adam, please chime in here and correct me if I get it wrong, because we want to get it right. But when he did a detailed examination of that building and its suitability for the purpose for which it's now being used, he came back and he said, this facility, this is what he said, you're always going to have issues with this facility because its original construction was never meant for the purpose for which you're now using it. So you can renovate this facility, and the initial cost was about $5.5 million. And the number that was being thrown around as recently as late last year was up towards $8 million. So the accelerated cost of renovating this facility, number 1. Number 2, the unsuitability for the purpose for which it's being used, being number 2, related to ongoing costs associated with its unsuitability, number 2. And finally, number 3, the fact that in order to do, essentially we were going to gut the facility and rebuild it inside out. was mean we were going to displace 4 different departments: codes, elections, engineering, and planning. And so it became, quite honestly, a very difficult thing to do. But Commissioner Dodd, we didn't have a choice. I mean, something had to be done with the facility. Quite unrelated to that, and I think I can say this publicly now, because I've talked to several of you about this, I got a call from Craig Tyndall, the city manager of Murfreesboro. And Craig asked me, as you well know, the city of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County equally share in the responsibility of the Limeball Library System, the Rutherford County Limeball Library System. And because of that development going on at that end of this block, the southern end of this block down toward Broad Street, there was an initiative to move the Limeball Library out of that particular facility and to take it out more into the Murfreesboro community. And his response to me was, Mayor, if we were to give you our part of that building, would you help us relocate Limeball Library? Well, I about came out of my chair because it met the real itch that we had going on at Goldstein, was how do we accommodate 4 departments, the growth in those 4 departments, yet at the same time not use a facility that it wasn't designed for. And so I said I would absolutely be interested in that, obviously at the approval of the county commission, but first thing we've got to do is we've got to ensure that we can get the Limeball Library on board, the board on board with moving out of that facility and going somewhere else within the city. That issue has been taken before the Limeball Library Board, and my understanding is Craig has spoken to them, and they are very, very interested in moving forward with that. And so what I didn't want to do, ladies and gentlemen, quite honestly, is I didn't want to continue to commit engineering and design dollars toward a Goldstein building that was inadequate for its purpose for which we were doing those engineering design costs, when we may have a more suitable facility in the Limeball Library facility. 2 quick metrics. The approximate square footage of the Goldstein building is 20,000 square feet. The square footage of a building that is typifies an administrative building is 34,000 square feet. So we get an additional 14,000 square feet and a building for which it's designed and immediate access to a parking garage. So, I mean, there are some significant positives here that I thought determined that we should look at it and moving forward. And so this is why this is on the agenda, because all this just happened literally, this part of it within the last 30 days. So the timing of bringing this before this body is quite appropriate. I want to underscore, no decision has been made by the Office of the Mayor. The Office of the Mayor doesn't get to make these decisions unilaterally, nor would it. But as things have moved along, I think it's appropriate that at some point in time we have the discussion, and as the Limeball Library Board moves forward, I think a tour of that facility would be appropriate on the part of this committee. And I'll be glad to answer any questions in that regard.
Have any questions of the mayor? Johnson?
So if we did work a deal with Murfreesboro, we would be sole owner of that piece of property?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Well, Chairman, we were discussing where we should tour, possibly before the next meeting. It seems that would be a very good suggestion to do that, because where you're going makes sense. Many of us, when we toured that building, everything you're talking about were concerns of ours. We're spending a lot of money, and really even Alan was wondering if it would even provide any space for growth, and that was an issue, because with a growing county, there's going to be more people voting. We're going to need more room for even just elections. So that was everyone frowning or making comments was not adequate for where we're going. So everything about this seems to be moving in a great direction, certainly worthy of looking at it. And thank you for that. I think this is all really a step in the right direction towards solving that problem.
It's an incredible opportunity for the county. It's in particular the Office of Elections, because during early voting, they've got significant challenges with early voters. out on the sidewalk, trying to get in inclement weather. We can actually use the parking garage now as a place for shelter while they have those voting. So there are honestly no negatives with regard to this. I actually believe we're going to save a tremendous amount of money in doing this as well, because now the renovation of the Goldstein building, like Commissioner Dodd suggests, there's a part of that still needs to take place, but because we're not trying to make it into something it's not suitable for, we now have some flexibility. What I mean by us, this committee, the mayor's office, has some options now. What do we want to do with that particular building, i.e. the Goldstein building? I have my ideas, and I would, at the appropriate time, I'd like to share them with you, but obviously that's a decision we get to make together.
Any other questions from the committee? Not, I think we need a motion on this. The motion to,
We got a from Mr. Commissioner.
I would, before you,
Okay,
you
I'm
could
gonna
make
go
the
ahead
motion and discuss it, or maybe before you make it, I would
go ahead and make the
I would
motion.
ask that do we need to consider the library boards? Are we touring it too soon?
Yes.
At the library?
We
Let's
are.
hold off on the tour, I would suggest, because the library board
May not
may
be
not be
ready
on
for
board
us.
yet. This is so new.
It is, and what I would like to do, thank you, Commissioner Dodd, and I really appreciate Commissioner Wilson's enthusiasm, and I share that, but let me, if this committee will not mind, I would like to reach out to Craig Tyndall, the city manager of Murfreesboro, to find out what his conversations are with Ms. Shacklet, and find out, because we don't want to get there too quick, but at the same time, let me find out when that can happen, and I will communicate that through the chairman, and then and we can move accordingly if that's okay.
Yeah, Chairman, do we need a motion to just ask the mayor to move forward with that information, or no?
No, not at this time. We can wait on that, but I do need a motion on not to pursue the Goldstein building until further notice, paying the bill to Clyde and Sweeney of $29,097 and sending the rest back to our general fund. I do need a motion to that.
So moved, Chairman.
I got a motion. Do I hear a second? Got a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Dodd?
Is there any way to have Klein Sweeney memorialize their thought on the cost, this $8 million, an email to drop into the file to remove support for Goldstein's? I was willing to spend some design money. We did that, $29,000 to generate some schematics, including 3 schemes for building floor plans, which helped result in a potential estimate of $8 million as opposed to something else. Can we have Klein Sweeney email something about the opinion of cost to help mothball this?
Would you like our county attorney to do it?
It may be as simple as...
I guess I'm not sure, Commissioner, what you're after. Let me say it another way. In my conversations with Bart Klein, I asked him to pause on this. He said, not a problem. I said, obviously, when we go back to the Property Management Committee and the full commission for approval, it would be my intent when we come up with a more suitable purpose for the Goldstein building, you would be involved in the design of that renovation because of your accommodating the county on this issue. So we've had that conversation. So my question is that what you're wanting to memorialize?
To memorialize, there was support for the Goldstein building to move forward unless it became cost prohibitive.
Correct.
And there's nothing to indicate it's cost prohibitive except our exchange here. And perhaps those minutes will be sufficient.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I understand better now. Adam, can you secure that information for us, please? Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner. I understand better now. Thank you.
Adam,
Call the
are
question.
you clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Question been called for roll call.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Chairman McAdoo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, next on the agenda, the Forensic Center. And I think the mayor is heading up that project with the state.
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a Zoom call meeting with the FSAG board, our committee yesterday. That's the governor's appointed committee dealing with federal stimulus money regarding the proposed forensic center for Weekly Lane in Smyrna. And we made our presentation, and they have decided to, it's down to 2 applicants. And we are one of 2 applicants vying for a little more than $30 million. We're asking for 16, as per our proposal that you are aware of, and they've decided to defer the decision to May 27th. So we will make another presentation on May 27th. On a side note, I think we're at a really good place. I think they're trying to figure out how to divide the money up, but that is pure speculation on my part. And if I have told many members of this body, you don't know how things are going to turn out. So we're going to continue to press the case and the need and the justification for a regional forensic center on Weekly Lane in Smyrna. So when I get additional updates or information, I'll be glad to inform this committee. But that's where we're at.
Need any input or information or help from the full commission?
No, this body and the full commission have been very supportive. I appreciate it. The governor and the FSAG committee, they understand our commitment to this project. The irony is Rutherford County is the only county in the state that is so uniquely positioned and qualified to pull this off. As a matter of fact, it's interesting, yesterday, Comptroller Mumpower specifically asked, given the financial state of some counties, how did we think we were going to be able to do this? And I assured him that the AAA bond rating that this county enjoys, we would not allow this project or any other project to jeopardize that, and that we felt like we had a strong business case based on the pro forma ROI that we had created, that this was going to be a positive for the county and a great service to the state. So thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any other questions about Forensic Center to the mayor? If not, we'll move on. Next on the agenda is Wayside Exhibit. And before we get into that discussion, the county attorney asked that we make a motion to rescind what we discussed or approved on this at the last meeting. So when we bring up discussion tonight, we'll be bringing it up from square one. So right now, I entertain a motion from any committee members to rescind what we discussed last meeting on the Wayside Exhibit.
Mr. Chairman, I did not realize that was the recommendation, because I made that motion to approve of the Wayside Exhibit and forward to the Historic Courthouse Museum Board of Trustees. And I was prepared to state that I'm still comfortable with that going to the Historic Courthouse Museum Board of Trustees to grant some professional guidance of what the monument could ultimately entail. But I don't want to remove my support for the African American Historical Society being represented on the courthouse square, in addition to other monuments that were done in the 21st century supporting some of the same topics. So I'm reluctant to rescind my motion.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I thank you very much for that, Commissioner Dodd, because I think you and I are on the same page here, and I want to make real clear. I think the point of the rescinding the motion is to get the posture of this committee back to square one so that you can then remake your motion. okay? So I'm not sure why I haven't talked to the attorney about why we need to rescind the motion and go back to square one, but I do trust the chairman's remarks in that regard. I don't believe it jeopardizes your intent, because I'm completely in line with your intent. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and state for the record, I have worked with Ms. Watkins on this. I find the language, I approve of the language, and even though some of my staff and I disagree, I also can approve of the language and approve of some of those on my staff who want to speak against it, which is their First Amendment right. The two are not mutually exclusive, and I want to make that emphatically clear. What I would like to see as the mayor is I would like to comply with the chairman and the attorney's wishes. We rescind the previous motion. We get a motion, a second, and vote on that. And then if Commissioner Dodd, you want to make the motion to approve the language, Mr. Chairman, and send with a second and according vote and send this on back to the full commission for a vote, that would...
Historic board.
The historic board? Okay, the historic board, excuse me. Then I am if that's in line with the attorney's wishes, I am in line with that. But I want to make clear that I support your initiative in doing so. So whatever we need to do to get it right is what the mayor's office is interested in. So I'll leave that to this body.
Commissioner Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to rescind our previous actions on the Wayside Exhibit.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
That was per advisement from our county attorney.
I have a second on it? Second. Any more discussion?
The reason I made this motion is because we were advised by our attorney this is the correct thing to do. I'm sure we'll have more discussion, but I'm definitely not against this, doing what our attorney advised us to do.
Right. Okay, all those in favor? Oh, it's awful weak. Roll call.
Commissioner Dodd?
No.
Commissioner Davidson?
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson?
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin? Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Chairman McAdoo?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now Commissioner Dodd, if you want to make that motion
Yes, sir.
again.
I make the motion to approve the intent of the Wayside marker that was submitted to property management last month and forward that to the Historic Courthouse Museum Board of Trustees to confirm the language is appropriate, accurate, and in keeping with the decorum of the courthouse square.
Okay, do you understand the motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion? I have one question.
I do. Because I don't know, and I think this is important, what I want to know is after it goes to the courthouse board, does it then go to the commission from there? Where's the path at that point, Commissioner Dodd?
Commissioner Dodd?
I have a thought.
The reason I'm asking...
Did I get a second?
Yes,
Okay.
you did. Yeah, you did get a second. The reason I'm asking, if I can say, is because if we're not sure and we have the latitude, I would like in your motion, if you could amend the motion to forward that directly to the county commission for a vote.
I would consider that. What I don't know is, historically, what other monuments, is there a protocol of monuments going from the Museum Board of Trustees, which is is it the Museum Board of Trustees a new group? Were they formed under Mayor Ketron, the Museum Board of Trustees?
Commissioner, if I could interrupt, I've just spoke with the chairman. I believe Greg Tucker, our county historian, might be able to shed some light on. Can you, If it's not too much, I just want to make sure we get the path right, if that's okay. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Entertain a motion to suspend the rule and let Mr. Tucker.
Or I can make the motion to, if that's more expeditious.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, but I'd like to suspend the rule and hear from Mr. Tucker. Do I hear a motion to that effect? Do I hear a second? All in favor? Mr. Tucker.
The board we're talking about is the Board of Trustees that is in charge and responsible for our museum. This is something you set up within the last year, and we are still feeling our way along. Bill Jakes, our chairman, is also here, and I see several other members here at the time. I think it also should be noted that when the museum was established, this body determined that it was not simply the rooms downstairs, but included the area within the parking around where there already are a number of exhibits. If I understand what's being proposed is that the language that's been reviewed will be submitted to the museum board. We have a meeting coming up this coming Monday or the next Monday. All right. And what I think would be appropriate for us to do is to document any concerns or suggestions or proposals and send that right back to you.
Right.
So you can then consider amending what we're working towards.
Do we understand what he said?
Mr. Tucker, are you saying come back to us as the commission or us as this body?
Well, I think it'd come back to this body first, because you're the ones referring it to us, and then go up through the commission.
We all understand what he's stating?
Are we comfortable with that? All right. I'm glad to respond to any other questions. You're pointing at me.
You got any question, Commissioner Dodd?
That would, so I had the question, would the original motion stand, or do I need to clarify that the Courthouse Museum Board of Trustees send it back to us?
It will stand, because you send it to the
Yeah,
it will stand.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker.
Thank you.
Any other questions before you take a seat? Okay, thank you. You're finished. Okay, back to the motion. Didn't every one of you understand the motion? You want to discuss it a little further or what?
Are you able to read back the motion just for clarity?
To accept the Wayside Exhibit information as presented, with the content as intended, to ensure that the content is appropriate, articulate, and keeps them with a decorum around the courthouse square.
That's your motion, Commissioner Dodd? Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
It's going to go to the Board of Trustees, and then it's going to come back here once they get finished with it.
That's the intent, is to come back here.
Commissioner Davidson?
Did you make the second on that one? I want to clarify. You did, okay.
Commissioner Johnson, you okay with that? Second, okay. All right, it's clear, right? Clear to each committee member? Do we need to call the roll?
I'm so sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Dodd.
I'm sending this forward with a positive recommendation.
Yes.
Right.
I don't want that clear. So if it happens to be unanimous vote, then this committee is sending what was presented to us, supported by the historical board.
Correct.
Okay.
Everyone understand? Okay, call the roll.
Sorry, Commissioner Irvin. Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Dodd.
Yes.
Commissioner Davidson,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilson,
Yes.
Chairman McAdoo.
Yes. Okay, and we're sending it back, we're sending it with a positive recommendation to our historical committee, and they will be meeting, what was that, May the, what was that meeting date? May the 8th? I like that to be in the minutes, meeting. Yeah, I like that to be in the minutes. Okay, next on the agenda. CCRC discussion. Commissioner Johnson. The CCRC nursing home discussion. Yeah, do you have any questions on? Okay.
I thought that in a previous,
I
thought that
thought you had some questions, and the attorney
I thought that in our previous
here.
meeting that we had asked for representatives from CCRC to be here and the attorney.
Well, he's here.
Okay.
I'm ready for you.
Here, Chairman, Commissioners. So I'm Philip Dodd with E. Evan Cope PLLC. We represent Community Care of Rutherford County, CCRC. I don't have any direction or guidance about what I'm supposed to say tonight. My thought was, if the chairman agrees, I'll have a brief overview of the legal relationship between CCRC and the county, and then I can explain and expound on that as much as you'd like me to.
I think that's what you were looking for, isn't that right?
Well, it's my
Commissioner Johnson?
understanding that we sent them questions and they were to come back and answer the questions here.
They were presented to Health and Ed. They were presented here once and then to Health and Ed. We presented them at Health and Ed a month ago, some of the, and then we're trying to set up a meeting out at the board to finalize that. I'm not trying to be
No, I understand
contrary.
it went to Health and Ed, but it never came back here as far as the questions to be answered.
If I may, I believe that was the November 30th meeting where I was here with, at the time it was Administrator Faust, and we answered a list of maybe 7 or 8 questions submitted by yourself, and we kind of tag teamed answering those questions on that meeting, I believe.
That's correct. But then it was turned over to Health and Ed, and there were more questions.
Would you like me to answer the Health and Ed questions here?
Yes, sir.
All right. I don't have in front of me specific questions from Health and Ed. My understanding was that we'd be presenting at Health and Ed, but my assignment from Health and Ed was briefly, what is the legal relationship between the Community Care of Rutherford County and Rutherford County? And so essentially, this conversation starts with CCRC is an independent, not-for-profit corporation under the state laws of the state of Tennessee. Now, there are 3 sources that govern the operations of CCRC. The first is the charter and bylaws. The second is the lease agreement between the county and CCRC. And the third is the management agreement between currently CCRC and United Church Homes. So the relationship between the county and CCRC is almost exclusively determined by the lease agreement. The only addition to that is found in the bylaws, where CCRC has determined that the county commission will elect their board of directors with the county executive as a permanent member. So outside of the charter and bylaws, which says that the county has an active role in the board. Everything else is determined by the lease agreement. I believe, and we can forward you another copy of the lease agreement. If you don't have that, I don't think that was included in tonight's presentation. But the lease agreement is what determines that relationship, and I'm happy to answer questions on that. Our position, and since it's kind of a buzz phrase about this topic, is are we in the nursing home business as the county? Is the county in the nursing home business? So it's our position that the county is not in the nursing home business. More accurately, the county is a lessor of county-owned property to a tenant, which is CCRC. So if I may, I'll leave it there unless you've got more specific questions or anyone has questions or you'd like me to expound on any of that.
Any other questions? Commissioner Dodd?
I do have in the original 7 questions were 8 questions were answered, and I have a copy of that. That you did. After those questions and answered, more questions were posed. Two questions: market value of the property and market value of property and land. I don't have that. I have failed as the chairman of Health and Ed. I have failed to get you that answer. At the moment, I don't recall where it landed. If we were simply awaiting on the tax assessor to pull that number, I'll beg ignorance on that one. That's my bad. The second question, the additional questions that came after the original answers were, another commissioner asked, for the last 10 years, how much by year has the community care cost the taxpayers? And the answer was 0. We've put money on the building, but we have not funded community care. We've loaned them some money at no interest that they're paying back. And the second question was, how much, if any, revenue has community care generated for the county? And the answer to that as well was 0, with the exception of, it's been stressed to Health and Ed Committee that the in-kind service that community care provides is a benefit to the county, such as rehabilitation of prisoners, rehabilitation of VA patients, other areas that they've contributed their expertise back to county employees and county charges. So those were presented in Health and Ed, and that's where I think there's been a disconnect. It didn't come back to you. So having said that, I didn't mean to interrupt Mr. Dodd, but he was flat-footed because these were the additional questions that I think the attorneys were unaware of. So if that helps get a little bit of light on this for the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Discussion, Commissioner Johnson?
I guess I was the one that brought up why are we in the nursing home business, and maybe I misspoke by saying that, but to me, the amount of money we're spending out there and what are we getting for it. And I understand it's nursing home, we have the elderly and others out there that really need this facility. There are these facilities all over the United States. I understand, and I don't discredit CCRC in the least bit as far as being top-notch. Not the only top-notch facility in the United States. As far as cost over 10 years, no, we don't put money into like the per patient cost, but we put money into the building. We just spent like $200,000 on the roof. It's sitting on 25 acres, 26 acres. I'm not sure how much of that acreage is actually utilized, but And I understand some of it may be in a floodplain, but these are things that I think this committee needs to discuss. I'm talking about property management. I'm not talking about kicking anybody out over there or anything. I'm just saying, are there any avenues for revenue out of that, not necessarily that facility, but that property, and possibly the facility, if it doesn't disrupt the residents out there? I wouldn't want that to happen. Totally be against that. But we do need revenue, and that's what I was looking at. And it's our job to manage property, and that's why I brought it up. That is our piece of property. And yes, it is tied up with the nursing home. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying there's some possible revenue out there, money that can come back to the county. That was my whole intent. Been bashed pretty well over this because, oh, you're going to kick all these people out. No, I never said that. And I appreciate you coming up here and spending your time away from your family and giving us the information. But it is our job to manage property, and that's what I'm trying to participate in.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, if I could respond, I think, Commissioner Johnson, you make a very valid point. Unfortunately, your point has been isolated to a single piece of property, and I think you make a very valid point. This committee and the mayor's office should constantly evaluate all of our property. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of this committee session night, we heard a presentation from Patrick Kamak about a piece of property on Singer Road, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're evaluating a piece of property to find out what its best need is for the county, and particularly in the form of revenue. And so let me just say that if any member of this committee has an idea, a specific idea about how we can best leverage the use of our property, I'm all for that idea. Please don't hesitate to bring that to me through this committee or to my office directly, and we will be glad to investigate it. I think you're right. You've kind of gotten beat up a little bit on a single piece of property, but what I want to say is we need to take your idea and expand it to every single piece of property that Rutherford County has. Another example is our proposal is 10 acres on Weekly Lane for a forensic center. We've got a pro forma with an ROI that looks at how we're going to use that property to generate revenue back to the county. So I think every piece of property, Commissioner, deserves that piece of scrutiny. And again, it's unfortunate I hate that you got beat up for it. I hate that. But let's take Commissioner Johnson's admonition and extend that to every piece of property so we can get the best utilization and return on our investment. And I hope that's what you're saying. Thank you.
Questions? Other questions? Remember, understand the agreement we got with community care.
I have one point of that Mr. Johnson had mentioned earlier. We are in a lease agreement that expires in 2026 that dictates the relationship between the nursing home and the county. By virtue of us owning a building, we lease them. We can indeed terminate that lease with 90 days notice at any time. To your point earlier, just to clarify, this committee could do that. But having said that, I suggest we go back into session if we're through with Mr. Dodd.
No questions? Attorney? If not,
thank you.
Call the meeting back in session.
So we've looked at leases and bylaws, but ultimately the bottom line is we could do one thing. We could have Michael Smith do a forensic survey and see what indeed we have spent on the physical plant out there, right? So I request that we have our director give us some assessment of what we have spent on the building in the last 10 years was the question. Can we ask that of our director? Put that in the minutes and ask Michael Smith to give us the expense the county has paid to community care in the last 10 years, or 5, do you care? 5 years, last 5 years. Expenditures on the building.
Can we direct that to their board?
I would like to direct it to our check writer, is my suggestion. I would like to direct it to our checking account. How much have we written? Not there, from our finance director. I would prefer it to be our finance director. And then secondly, we've done a lot of background. We've educated ourselves on the origin of the nursing home, from the sick house to the poorhouse to a professional nursing home. But bottom line is, you want to know what's its best and highest use of that building and that ground, period. Whether that ultimate says nursing home goes or stays, or so how do we do that? To hire a consultant or the Chamber of Commerce, or because I want to get it. What expert could do that for us? Because we've danced around it for months, and the bottom line is, is it worth selling? Killing the lease, whatever. You make up all kind of scenarios. So how do we?
Commissioner Johnson?
I think one thing we would do is to survey the property, see how much is in the floodplain, how much is the cemetery. I think the cemetery is in a separate plot, but it's still basically all one. There again, I'm not saying sell the nursing home, but it's a possibility we can subdivide it and sell off part of it that we're not going to we're not using or going to use. And I know some people are saying, absolutely not, you're not touching anything out there. Well, okay, give me a reason. I haven't heard any reason other than, well, you're going to get resistance. Well, believe me, I've gotten resistance, but from the people in my district, I haven't gotten any resistance. In fact, I've been told to push it forward, and I'm not pushing anything. I'm just trying to, like the mayor said, all our properties, look at best bang for the buck.
Commissioner Dodd?
We had by default, we stumbled upon the expertise of the Chamber of Commerce on the Singer property. They sound like they're the perfect resource to evaluate that piece of property. And I would like to hear of a resource, a suggestion on how to assess its value. We're still not clear, except we could do a survey, but is there a concrete professional evaluation that we could suggest and perhaps do and get this part complete? And maybe it's the chamber.
Yeah.
So I appreciate where you're going with this, but I don't believe a comparative analysis between a vacant piece of property on Singer Road that just had a house sold that we're moving off the property extensively now as a raw piece of land is comparable to a facility that is home to 100 senior citizens. And ultimately, the decision is up to this body whether or not to move forward with whether or not to do an evaluation of that property for its best and highest use. I don't have a vote here. I don't get to make a motion. I don't get to make a second. But I would not be in support of such an initiative because of the potential unintended consequences it would have on 100 residents who are in the golden years of their life. And I think, for me, I just could not support that. Again, having said that, I respect this body, I respect its process, and I will do whatever this body deems is best interest of the county. But I want to make sure that as the chair of the CCR board and out there every month and seeing those residents, that for us to proceed much further would be too disruptive, and it's not something I could support at this time. And I just feel compelled to share that.
Commissioner Johnson. Back there, you've been quiet all night. Heard from Commissioner Phillips, but not Commissioner Johnson.
As a
He's on the
representative
board.
of the commission on the Community Care Board, I would not support that in any form.
Commissioner Johnson.
That's what's so
Anthony
irritating.
Johnson.
Bring something up, ask good questions. You ask questions that your constituents ask you to ask, and then all you get is, I will not support it. Well, why not? That's all I hear is, I will not support it. That's the way it's been for years out there. Nobody wants to discuss it. I don't know if it's politics or what it is, but it ties the hands of some committees when that state of mind is broadcast.
Commissioner Phillips.
There's been no one has told me why they wouldn't support it, other than the mayor says, well, I wouldn't want to disrupt anything out there. That's fine. I understand that. But if you subdivide that property, that's not going to affect the people in that building. But nobody wants to discuss a thing about it.
As we open it up tonight, I see another commissioner that would like to have an input, and he's chairman of budget, and I definitely would recognize him at this moment if he want to come forward. I don't, for this discussion.
I just wanted a chance to show off my T-shirt here is what it was. I'd like to answer Commissioner Johnson's questions as far as why I definitely wouldn't support it, but I've got reasons behind that, and I think you well deserve an answer. I don't know how many of you remember Willie Brandon, former janitor for us. Last time this was brought up for discussion, and I'm going to try to go back and find the film, because he was actually, we were televising back then too, before he passed away at, what was it, 107, 108?
102, I believe. 102, I believe.
Anyway, he made the statement, and I want to tell you what he said. He said that it's not everybody in this county can afford to go to Adams Place. This facility is something that we are providing for our community to make it affordable for people to have a place for their family members to go. Now, to go a little further, when we're talking about finances and money, Commissioner Clyde Elrod, who was one of the forming committee members to get this set up, and I was extremely proud of that. Every time I talked to him, he brought up this board. But he mentioned that one year the commission was going to have to raise taxes. Didn't have enough money to pay all the bills. Well, instead of having, I think it was election year too, so nobody wanted to raise taxes. But anyway, instead of doing that, the Community Care Board loaned the county the money that they needed so they didn't have to have a tax increase. Now, I'm referring that back to Commissioner Elrod, and I truly believe that happened. But as far as my feelings on this, I don't mind looking at the property. You know, we looked at possibly putting a child care center out there. That could be a source of revenue for us. You know, I think our board, I've known the commissioners that have been on that board for years. I haven't served on it myself, but I know Commissioner Cook for a long time was on there. But, and also my next door neighbor, Doug. But they've all gave me positive reviews of where we're at and where we're headed with this group. Now, I personally would like to see us to look into the child care end of it to see if that could be, somewhere we could make some revenue, if you're looking at something like that. And I have no problem looking at the property and assessing it and seeing what it's worth. I think it's a good idea anytime that we know what our property's worth. So, and that is your job here. So I'm not throwing rocks at you. You asked why, and that's why I felt compelled to come up and tell you why. Because I, for one, couldn't probably afford to go to Adams Place. And I know there are a lot of people whose family can't afford those higher end places. And this is something we're doing for our residences. And that's why it's so important to me. Thank you. And Chairman, I really appreciate you allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Also, I'm going to ask Commissioner Phillips.
My take on the thing is that from a personal perspective, that CCRC has a special place in my heart personally. And I can remember years and years and years ago where it was determined that Rutherford County was in the nursing home business. And through effective management over the last 20 years or more, that board has turned that facility around to where it's not a cost to the county. Of course, we still own the building, and we have some responsibility there. But I kind of equate it to, let's just say, and it's not a good analogy, but let's just say that what if we built a school, a high school, and did not build a football stadium, okay? What's our responsibility to that? Is it our responsibility to teach kids or to provide them with opportunities for physical wellness, such as a football team? It's similar to that to me. We are providing a particular service to a segment of our citizens that they probably could not afford or get anywhere else. So maintaining a building or maintaining that property, in my mind, is a small price to pay. What I've heard is the answer to the questions that were asked up here tonight is that, are we in the nursing care business? No, we're not. It's managed, and the cost to the county is zero to provide that services. The only cost to the county that I know of is sometimes to maintain the building or the property. Most of the time when we have expansions and some major renovations, we supplement the borrowing of that money by guaranteeing, but the board itself actually ends up paying for all of those renovations and expansions. So I remember years and years and years ago, we had, it was a drain on the county's budget simply because we probably were in the nursing home business. But now I really don't think that we are, but I do think that property itself has some value, but I'm not overly concerned what the value of that property is, but what services we provide to a segment that's vulnerable in our community at a minimal cost. And that's how I look at it. I don't think we're in the nursing home business, but I think that the service that we provide is similar to what we provide to the youth of the county. We provide ball fields, we provide those type of things, and that is a cost that the county pays for. So to my mind, there is a similarity that we can draw there. I do think that the question that was asked months ago, are we in the nursing care business? I hadn't even thought of it. So I think it was a good question to ask. What I've heard tonight is that we are not. We own the property. We control the board. So we can ensure that that is a well-managed and well-run facility, and I don't recommend any changes to that. If we need to evaluate the property, I think our tax assessor can give us that answer pretty quickly. And then what we do with it from there is neither here nor there. We were looking this time last year very strongly at building a daycare center to provide services to county employees. That may be very a needed process that we can look at in the future. Due to the cost and other types of things, I understand why we pulled that, but also, you know, we could use that facility for or that property for some other things as we go forward. I do think that question was pertinent, but I've got my answer, is that we're not in the nursing care business.
Commissioner Paul Johnson.
I have one statement, and the mayor's heard this 2 or 3 times, and simply, I feel that we have a moral obligation to the citizens of this county that do not have the capability of providing the service that they get out there. So I'm like Commissioner Phillips, it's dear to my heart. I served 6.5 years on that board before, and I'm back on it now. And I just feel that we have a moral obligation to the elderly citizens and that need that service.
Commissioner Anthony Johnson.
Well, it keeps getting put back to the same statement. That is a false statement. That, well, maybe you can't afford to go to Adams Place. Well, yeah, that's true. I can't afford to go to Adams Place either. I don't know if I can afford to go to any nursing home. But the nursing home is run, according to their attorneys in the first presentation they gave, it's based on the market. They don't cut the price for anybody. And I've heard that we do have inmates that go out there, and that's at no cost. But as far as, lack of better words, normal or regular residents that are out there, they're paying what they would pay at another nursing home. They're not getting a break. Their attorney told us that in a previous meeting. It's on the record. But we still have people getting up here saying, well, we've got to do it because people can't afford to go these other places, and they can afford to go here because it's cheaper. It is not. I don't pull punches with anything. I just tell it like it is. I tell the truth based on information that I receive, not what I want. A lot of times it's contrary to what I want, is what I have to vote on up here because of rules and regulations. Seems like it's beating a dead horse because there again, no one really is hearing what I've said. It just keeps being turned back around that you're trying to kick these people out of here, and that's not the point. The point is there is most likely some revenue out there that would not disrupt that nursing home. I don't know any other way to put it. And another thing that was brought up tonight too was not being concerned with the cost out there. And I know there is concern from that individual about the cost out there, cost on anything, but I'm concerned with every penny we spend. You know, I didn't bring this up because I thought we would make millions of dollars off that property, but if we can get $10 off of it, that's $10 that we don't have that will help with our budget. You know what our budget looks like, so.
Well, I understand that Health and Ed, Commissioner Dodd is planning on meeting out at the nursing home in July and August. Is that correct?
It's yet to be determined, but we were going to clarify that and with their board, and it will be after our budget season, so July or August. I don't remember the exact wording of our motion the other night, but we're going to look into it.
Are you planning on including the board?
It was going to be the Health and Ed with their board, with the board of CCRC to meet, to have questions, to have access to their admin, just to have a Health and Ed meeting at their facility.
Mayor?
Well, as the chair, that creates some issues about the Health and Ed Committee and the board meeting in a room that can accommodate both and it being open to the public. So just, Commissioner Dodd, I'm just saying we got something that we got to kind of work through there.
Agreed. And a component of our conversation meet out there, we confirmed that it could be advertised. We confirmed that Rutherford County IT could set up and televise and or record. So we've done some of that legwork, but obviously not. We haven't.
Those particular pieces aren't what I was referring to. I was just
space.
We don't have a room that can accommodate that many people that I'm aware of. I need to find that out.
Thank you. And the impetus was a board member reminded Health and Ed that previous years Health and Ed met at the facility. And so,
but I don't think it was in conjunction with the CCRC board. So you were talking about meeting in conjunction with the CCRC board.
That was my impression. It may have been more of a meet or greet, but it was my impression that it was a board and Health and Ed. So if we need to clarify with our chair and your board and legal, by all means, we'll do that.
I think that, if I may, at the next CCRC meeting, let me just make the inquiry to see if there's a space available, and I'll report back to your Health and Ed Committee or to you privately, and then we can go there. Because right now we're kind of dealing with an abstract of whether we can even accommodate, there are 7 people on the Health and Ed Committee plus the CCRC board plus the admin staff for United Healthcare. So we're talking 20 people right there as a minimum, and so we just got to find out if we got a place available.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if the result, I'm spitballing here, the result may be we convene a meeting here then. So, but and talk to the finance director of the board as well. He has some recollection of traditions of Health and Ed and the county meeting out there. Thank you.
Based on your information, would it be appropriate if other commissioners meet with you? Would it be appropriate if other commissioners meet with you? Other committees like property management, could we be included in that?
I think that to the point of the chairman of the CCRC board, there may be a whole lot of complications here, so I suggest we table that and let the chairman of their board contemplate the impact, and we may have to craft another way to dialogue and engage with that board.
And at a point of clarification, the finance chair, Doug Bodery, has made that comment about the Health and Ed meeting out there, but Commissioner, I don't believe the comment was made that it was that committee met in conjunction with the CCRC board meeting. The committee just met out there in the same room where the CCRC board met, so you had a committee meeting out there. It was at a different time.
Thank you. So
that could happen without issue.
I need clarity on that, and I think that I rescind that. I would like you and I to dialogue about what can happen and
Yeah,
get some advice and counsel.
we will do that, but just to be real clear, I don't see any issue at all with the Health and Ed Committee or even the Property Management Committee meeting out there at a time of your choosing. All we need to do is schedule it. That room would certainly accommodate that. I just don't know if it would accommodate both the CCRC board and a committee at the same time, if that makes sense.
It does.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, that may be something property management can look at in the future. Meet it out at the nursing home or touring the nursing home and get some idea of how we're looking out there. So, Commissioner Johnson, you want to add?
I think it would be a good idea if we toured the property, but to move our meeting out there, I just don't see a purpose of having our meeting out there because of all of the things it involves. We have county employees that are going to have to drive across town, haul equipment, and it's just a whole, it's a lot more to it than just saying we're going to meet out there. It's very simple to go out there and tour like we do. We did today, the one stop, and then we came here and had our meeting. It's really simple. When you go to moving meetings across town and imposing on another facility and their management, it just, to me, it's just not a good idea.
And I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with the comment, but the Juvenile Detention Center does have its board meeting that is televised out at the Juvenile Detention Center, and OIT does a fantastic job of taking the equipment out there, setting it up beforehand. Commissioner, I don't know what's involved in that, because when I get there 5 minutes before the meeting's supposed to start, they're already set up, ready to go. That's how good they are. But I do know that they do that on one occasion every month, and, so it's not out of the realm of possibility, so maybe it's just something we need to look at.
Okay. So maybe you can look at it and we get the answer by next month.
Rachel, are you taking down all these notes of things that I need to do? Because I think so. What we need to do is we need to get with Abby, the director, and coordinate that. Sorry, committee. We're trying to make sure I can keep up. This is budget season, and you guys are not helping.
Okay, so what I'm understanding that we'll probably take a tour in the future, but the mayor is going to get back with us, an appropriate time to do it. Okay, any other questions from nursing home? If not, we'll move on. Next on the agenda is naming of county-owned buildings. Doesn't get any easier, Commissioner Wilson.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I can set the stage, maybe we can expedite ourselves out of here because we're all getting tired. So, I asked, this is not even to the point of making a decision. Mr. Hennessy has done this at the request of the chairman and I. It's just to begin a conversation. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure that a conversation even begins tonight, but Eric, we can certainly distribute these set of ideas for purposes of discussion at the next meeting. But this came up as a result of the one-stop naming and how there wasn't a criteria or a process for naming public buildings. And this is something that, quite honestly, I wanted to do the first month I got here because I think this is important. But there absolutely needs to be a process. And I think this process, if I could say, this process needs to be studied by this particular committee over several meetings, because this needs to be done right, because if there's anything that doesn't need to be political, this is it. And so I don't think, from my standpoint, I don't think we can spend too much time doing this and just being careful. So my recommendation to the committee, Eric, would be once you kind of go over this a little bit, pass this out. We can either email it, or if you got hard copies for them.
It's already on SharePoint.
That's perfect. So, and this is nothing more than just a starting point. these are ideas that we have. I wouldn't even say these are recommendations yet from my office, but this is just to get the conversation going, because I do think as we go forward with all these facilities that we're building, it's possible we can get more and more requests for naming a building after somebody, and I think it's extremely important that we have a process. And so with that, I'll let Eric have the floor, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chairman.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Okay, so what I was asked to do was kind of look at other communities and other towns and see what was out there and what other people were doing. What I found is a lot of people are using this as a fundraiser. When you start looking at universities, like they'll let you name anything if you got enough money. And that wasn't what we wanted to do at all. And so I tried to pull from various communities and various areas things that I thought were kind of a sound policy, a sound principle to have. And I know this is on your SharePoint, you can take a look at it. And I'm not asking for anything. This is not a resolution. I can't write resolutions for this body or any other body of the commission. That is Nick's job, and I've already talked to Nick about this, and I've shared with him what I was going to be presenting, and we're basically just looking at this point for some discussion, maybe not tonight, but some discussion and some guidance as to what you guys and gals would think is appropriate and what is not appropriate to put into a resolution, and then Nick and I would work together on getting that resolution together that could be presented back to this committee at a later date. Just for ease, I would like to start at the bottom of what's on this one-page document, and that is the renaming policy guidelines. I feel like, and this all came from other communities. I can't tell you right now off the top of my head what came from where, but I feel like if we name a building, then that building needs to stay that name forever, unless something changes. And unless there is that name becomes ineffectual, inappropriate, or if additional biographical information is later obtained that would kind of say that name was no longer appropriate for this community. And that's essentially what is being said here in the bottom portion under the renaming policy. The reconsideration guidelines, I could see a time when somebody would come forward and say, I want to name a building after a certain individual, and that may not pass the commission. And if it does, I would not want them, I don't think you guys and gals would want them either to be coming back every month going, hey, but I really want this to be named whatever. And so I put in there a provision that would say that if a building, be that from a commissioner, would probably be the one who would be requesting this, but if that failed to vote in the commission, then we probably need to wait a little while. And I figured 2 years was probably an a sufficient amount of time to wait, to retry that, to see if somebody would like to rename that building. Going back to the top and just some general guidelines of how to name buildings, I think first that if someone requests to, and that being a commissioner, requests to name a building after a certain individual, then that individual's biographical information would need to be provided and vetted by this committee. That's number one. I don't think we need to get into naming individual rooms within a building because I think that gets to be, if you got the Phil Wilson building and the Jeff Phillips boardroom, that at some point that may get to be complicated if we start naming every room after every commissioner. And so I don't think that is a wise thing to do. And then the meat of this is basically that you want it to be named after someone who has demonstrated a significant impact on Rutherford County, the state of Tennessee, or national affairs, that it's someone who has resided in Rutherford County for at least 5 years, other than maybe like, if you wanted to name it the Michael Jordan Building or something, some national figure that is prominent. And so that is what basically 3 and 4 is covering, is just that it needs to be somebody who has made an impact for our community, the state of Tennessee, or the country, or who has, kind of risen in their field of endeavor, that is from Rutherford County, that has a close connection to Rutherford County. Number 5, I think, is more in lines of, again, just trying to not create confusion. If we've got the Phil Wilson building, I'm picking on you because you're right here in front of me. If we got the Phil Wilson building, yeah, there you go. If we've already got that building in Smyrna, then we probably don't need to have the Phil Wilson building in Christiana as well, because that's going to create some possibility for confusion when somebody says, oh yeah, it's in the Phil Wilson building, and then everybody's going, well, which one? So number 5 is basically that there would be no more than one building in the county that would be named after an individual, and that this board would need to look at not only county buildings, but also Murfreesboro City, Smyrna City, Laverne, and Eagleville, to see if they already had the Phil Wilson building. And then, I think that you probably don't want this to be controversial. I don't think that you would really want to name a building after somebody who's going to slide by on 50% plus one. I don't think that would be what your goal would be in naming this. You're naming it after people who have contributed a tremendous amount to this community or to the state or to the country. I would think that most of these would probably be individuals that would get a unanimous vote from the commission, or almost a unanimous vote. So because of that, I put in here number 6, that it would need to be approved by 2/3 majority of the Board of Commissioners. These are just some ideas of things that I thought of and that other communities are already doing. Some of these are probably copied and pasted verbatim from somewhere else, the truth be known. Some of them I had to tweak a little bit and that kind of thing. But essentially, these are things that other communities and other cities and universities already have within their guidelines for the naming of buildings, primarily. It's what we're talking about is buildings. If somebody asks, well, what about a bridge? Well, if you already got the Phil Wilson Bridge, I don't think they're going to confuse that with the Phil Wilson building. This topic is just pertaining to county buildings. And as I said, I spoke to Nick about this, and we would like for you guys to discuss this tonight or whenever. Not tonight. And make that clear, Eric. And make some suggestions as to what of this, of any, that you think that should be used in the guidelines. Nick would then work on creating the resolution, and we would go from there.
Okay, Commissioner Wilson.
And I'll make this real quick. I'll probably forget if I don't actually say it now. On number 6, where we talked about shall be a 2/3 vote, I feel like if that's going to be for naming, probably should also be for renaming, because if we're trying to keep it from being political, the fact that we're saying if it's inappropriate, ineffectual, or if additional biographical information is later obtained, says who? To whose opinion? I think that if that's subjective can be political, so it should be at least a 2/3 vote on both, just to keep that consistent. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, and I think there's language. It does not say 2/3 vote, and I agree with you there, but it says efforts to change the name shall be subject to the most critical examination so as not to diminish the original justification for the name or discount the value of the prior contributors. So, I was trying to put in language to say, really, we don't want to change the name once it's there. But that's fine. I can go back and say that this would need to require a 2/3 vote as well. I would agree with that.
Any other questions?
Just
Phillips?
one particular point. The mayor is exactly right. This needs to be discussed over a period of time and thought through, because when you're naming something like a county building, it's going to last for decades. So we don't need to rush into this. I would suggest Mr. Chairman, that under property management, that Eric be allowed to address the full commission at our next meeting to talk about this, exactly what he's discussed with us, and get all commissioners kind of in tune to have input into this. Does that make sense?
If I could, because Eric is doing this at my behest, so he's acting on behalf of the mayor's office, and I guess what I would like to do, Commissioner Phillips, before we take it to the full commission, I absolutely want the full commission's involvement, but I quite honestly wanted Eric just to hand this out tonight without kind of going through it, because I knew if we did, it was going to open up some discussion, and I really want to have some exhaustive discussion in here before we go with more discussion at the county commission. I really want to respect this committee's role in providing guidance to the full commission, and I'm not saying I don't agree with that, but I really want to be very deliberative with this process, and if this stays here for a meeting or two so we can have that process, because we're toward the end of this meeting, it's after 8 o'clock, and I'm sure there's some questions we have, and so my intent tonight with this whole idea that goes back to September was it starts here, we really mix it up pretty good. It then go to the commission with a kind of a framework, that then, of course, the full body would then fully discuss, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, but also this committee could discuss and discuss and discuss, but when it goes to the full commission, there'd be a number of other commissions.
That's certainly a risk we take. Yeah, it is.
That's going to want to rediscuss that whole thing. So my suggestion was to inform the full commission that we're looking at a policy or procedure, and this is the topic that the Property Management Committee will be looking at for the next several months.
Now that I think is a splendid idea.
And maybe we could just disseminate this information at the county commission, attach it to the agenda, and with that explanation, Alan, that's what the Property Management Committee will be looking at. So if you're interested, tune in, ask your questions, those kind of things. Does that make sense?
Yes, I better understand now. Thank you.
And I don't mind presenting again if you need me to. Okay.
Pass it out.
Thank you, Commissioner. That's perfect.
Okay. So each one get a copy on this committee of this, or would you like it emailed to you? Email?
Put a hard copy in my box.
Hard copy in your box? Email to the committee members. Continue this discussion at the next meeting. Also, I will get together with Eric and see what presentation we need to make. Okay. Now we're down to other business.
Mr. Chairman, I got one thing. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, committee members first.
You yield.
For the next, this is not for this committee meeting because we're not prepared to make a presentation or discuss, but just to put a bug in your ear, Adam Dodd and I have been discussing the parking around the square. It's getting worse, not better, and so we're going to bring, we hope, as a solution that you'll appreciate for discussion. So if, Mr. Chairman, we can put that on the formal agenda for us to discuss. We'll be talking everybody's favorite topic, parking.
Okay, we'll have that on the agenda for next month. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As commissioners, you all know we're not going to agree on everything. But you disagree with me, that's okay. I love every one of you. We're all God's children. But if we've ever been, or if you're ever going to be in agreement, let's be in agreement to pray for Carl Boyd. Carl's very sick. He needs your prayer. Carl needs your prayer. Carl Boyd.
And I agree with that 100%. I made that statement at the beginning of the meeting, but each and every one of you, like he stated, Commissioner Boyd is very ill, and he's in the hospital. So each one of you consider him in your prayers. And Commissioner Phillips, you can pass that on to the other commissioners.
Just, I've had some conversations via text message with Carl. It's a private matter to him, but he is very sick. And my response to Carl was that my family will be praying for your family. This commission family should take that exact same stance and be praying for that family member, Carl Boyd, and his family. His whole family is affected by this, not just him. So make sure that when we pray for Carl, we're praying for his family as well. Thank you.
Good statement, good statement. Any other business come before the committee tonight? If not, entertain a motion to adjourn.